With some opening remarks. Good evening and welcome to all of our distinguished speakers and guests. Welcome to our panel event on Peace Boat, a platform for education and activism, jointly hosted by young professionals in foreign policy, our YPFP Tokyo, and Peace Boat. My name is Marin Ekstrom, and I am a programs officer with YPFP Tokyo. It is my pleasure to be your chair for today's event. Before we get started, I would like to share a few administrative guidelines. First, today's speakers will be speaking in English and Japanese, and we will offer simultaneous translation in Japanese and English throughout this event through the interpretation channels. You can navigate between the interpretation and main channels using the translation button located on the right side of the menu under your Zoom video display. At any time, you may join the Japanese interpretation channel to hear Japanese interpretation or the English interpretation channel to hear English interpretation. And you may also return to the main session to hear the speaker directly at any time. Please note that this feature may have limited functionality or may not be available if you are joining from your mobile device or if your version of Zoom is not up to date. Also, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, we encourage you to share them in the chat, either in English or Japanese. We will have some time for Q&A later in the session. Please note that this event is being recorded and that the recording will be made available online at a later date. Finally, through our events, we aim to promote an environment of trust where we can build understanding on complex issues through international, intergenerational, and inclusive dialogue. We kindly ask that all distinguished presenters and guests respect differences in culture, experience, and perspective, regardless of the topics being discussed. Please note that this event will operate under Chatham House rule, which means that participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speakers, nor that of any other participant may be revealed. Thank you for your kind attention and understanding on these points. Before I introduce today's panel session, I would like to take this opportunity to share a few remarks about YPFP Tokyo. YPFP is a global organization that has been working for nearly 20 years to build the next generation of diverse and passionate leaders through career building programs, engaging events with a global community of peers, and opportunities to elevate voices through research, writing, and publication. Tokyo is the newest YPFP branch, connecting people from around the world with those in and interested in Asia. YPFP Tokyo is a membership-based organization and accepts new member applications on a rolling basis. If you are a university student, a young professional, or someone interested in contributing to these groups, we encourage you to visit our website to learn more about YPFP Tokyo. We look forward to welcoming you at our future events. For today's event, I am pleased to introduce a truly inspiring panel of international educators and activists to share their experiences and insights on the multifaceted and evolving program of work that Peace Boat engages in, both in Japan and around the world. Before I introduce our speakers, let me explain a bit further about the topic of today's event. Peace Boat is one of Japan's most innovative NGOs. It organizes around the world voyages, and in its almost 40 years of operation, participants have visited more than 200 ports in 80 countries. Peace Boat also offers a unique program of activities centered on experiential learning and intercultural communication. All of these activities advocate peace, human rights, and sustainability. In particular, the promotion of the SDGs is key for Peace Boat. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speakers, Joyce, who is an international coordinator with Peace Boat, and Louise Sørensen, a fellow international coordinator with Peace Boat. We are so thankful to have you with us today. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Marin, and thank you to everybody from the team who was involved in putting together today's event. We're really excited to have the chance to hold this together and to get to know more about you and all of the work that you're doing too, of course. I'll just share my slides now, if I can. Hopefully you can see this okay. Wonderful. So thank you once again. As Marin has just introduced, we're here today to share some information about Peace Boat as an example of an NGO working here in Japan. Maybe first just to introduce myself personally. So I first joined Peace Boat as a volunteer interpreter between English and Japanese. That was on our 51st global voyage, which was actually all the way back in 2005 now. At that time, I was planning just to volunteer for 3 months, but somehow ended up becoming very much more engaged in the organization and became full-time staff the next year. And so I've now been working with Peace Boat since then as an international coordinator. So it's actually almost 17 years, I realized when I was putting this together today as well. So personally, I mostly coordinate different projects relating to peace building, conflict prevention, and nuclear disarmament. And I'll share maybe some more concrete examples about that a little bit later on in today. So as you've just heard, Peace Boat is a Japan-based international NGO, which promotes peace, human rights, and sustainability. We carry out our main activities through a passenger ship that you can see on the screen here now, of course, and work together in partnership with different local community groups, universities, United Nations agencies, and more as well. Our activities both on board the ship and in port aim to empower participants, to strengthen different local capacities for sustainability, and to build people-to-people or grassroots cooperation beyond borders as well. The voyages are run on a social business model, and they blend sustainable tourism, lifelong learning, and different friendship-related activities as well, together with educational programs, cooperative projects, and different advocacy and campaigning as well. So in addition to the voyages, we also organize different projects and campaigns based on land here in Japan, where I'm speaking from today, or in other parts of the world as well. During the pandemic, of course, COVID, as you can imagine, has had quite a large impact on our work. And so we've been able to develop different online initiatives and so on in this time that maybe we can share a little bit about today as well. So today, with the three of us from the Peace Boat group, so from Peace Boat and our sister organization, PBV, we'll be speaking with you about some of our education and activism related work, particularly within the overall umbrella of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I'll speak a little bit more about nuclear disarmament, and then my colleague Ikuno will speak more about the humanitarian aid that we're involved in as well. And we're, of course, always keen to develop new partnerships, whether with individuals or organizations, and find different ways to work together. So I look forward to our conversation today. I won't go into too much detail with this because I think Marin did introduce us so beautifully before as well. But on this slide, you can see a little bit about Peace Boat's history. We were founded in 1983, so that's almost 40 years ago now. We'll be having the anniversary next year. And to date, we have carried out 103 voyages, mostly global voyages. Before the pandemic, we were organizing 3 global voyages every year for 3 months each voyage, and 2 short regional voyages in the Asia Pacific region as well. And over 70,000 people, mostly from Japan, but also from different countries around the world, have joined our voyages to date. And from here, I'll hand over, I think, to my colleague Louise, who will share with you a little bit more about the voyages and particularly the SDGs related activities that we're doing. So Louise, over to you.
Thank you very much, Meri. Hello, everyone. And yes, thank you as well for having us here today. It's a great opportunity to not only introduce Peace Boat, but also get input from all of you participating today. So thank you very much for having us. Yes, as Marin said or explained, I'm also an international coordinator at Peace Boat. And my first Peace Boat voyage was our 81st voyage, which was in 2013. So compared to Meri, I'm still very new at Peace Boat, but I have a lot to learn. But in 2013, I actually joined as an international passenger. And then in 2018, I joined as a volunteer English teacher. And I'll talk a little bit more about volunteering later. But after volunteering, I became a full-time staff member. And I mostly work with work on coordinating education on the voyages. So I coordinate our guest educator program that I will also explain shortly. And then I'm involved in in Peace Boat's SDGs strategy, our SDGs work, and all that I will get into shortly. So basically, if you take a look at this slide here, Peace Boat Voyages, they offer a unique program of activities, as you heard, that are centered around experiential learning. So basically learning through experiences. And of course, with different nationalities, not only on board, but also meeting people of different backgrounds in ports of call. It's also about intercultural communication and dialogue. And since the very beginning of Peace Boat, a guiding principle has been that, seeing things with your own eyes and hearing directly from people is much more impactful than simply reading or being taught about something. So the idea is really to go and, learn from people and see things with your own eyes. And one way that we learn from people directly is through our guest educator program. And a central focus for us is peace education and awareness raising. So to prepare us for the different ports of call, just to give you an idea, a global voyage visits typically 20 or around 20 different ports of call. So it's a lot of different countries and places. So to prepare us for these different ports of call, we provide, we get information about their social, political, and cultural context by inviting guest educators on board. They are either from these ports of call, or maybe they are specialists in topics related to the voyage theme or to the ports that we're going to visit. And diversity here is really key, both in terms of topics, but also in terms of who our guest educators are. So when we look at diversity, we really try to include a mix of different age groups, genders, languages, and so on. And also our guest educators come from, different walks of life. So we have maybe university professors, activists, journalists, artists, and so on. So it's quite a mixed group of people. So on the ship, we have the guest educators, but then when we reach these different ports of call, we have study and exchange tours where participants, our voyage passengers, our voyage participants also can learn about social, environmental, or political issues, while of course meeting people from around the world and making friends with people around the world. This is of course very important as well. Because as I said, it's about peace education, but peace education is also about, having fun together and being active together. And these are really essential components of a voyage as well. So a day on the ship is really a mix of lectures and workshops, but also sports and other social activities. Some of the pictures you see here is from the very popular sports day that we usually have on our global voyage. So a day on the ship is really busy. And I don't know if any of you have been to Fuji Rock or any other big music festivals, but it's kind of similar to a large music festival with different stages and different venues. And you can, on the ship, you can select whichever activity you want to participate in. Just like at a music festival, you would decide which artist to go see next. So it's never boring, it's never dull. And yeah, a day is quite full on the ship. As Meri also mentioned, partnership and collaboration are really at the core of what Peace Boat does. We talk about partnerships, of course, with our guest educators and the partners we have in ports of call, but we also see the onboard community as almost a type of partnership, so that, Peace Boat staff, volunteers, passengers, we all work together to make the most of this voyage. And there are lots of opportunities to really contribute to making a voyage a success. For example, you can help organize events or activities, or if you are really passionate about a topic or you know a lot about a topic, you can also run your own lecture, your own workshop about that topic. So being on the ship is actually it's a good place for, especially young people, maybe to try something for the first time, maybe to be in charge of an event for the first time, but basically for anyone, it's a great place to maybe try something you haven't tried before. And a lot of people use Peace Boat almost as a stepping stone for sort of future endeavors. That could be studying or volunteering overseas. It could be, we've had people that joined Peace Boat and later started, created startups or started their own NGO. Some people have volunteered with the JICA, which does development work around the world. So the voyages are really great places to learn new skills and exchange know-how. And as you heard, we are a campaigner for the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And well, although Peace Boat started long before the SDGs existed, somehow the SDGs and what Peace Boat does align really well. Because for Peace Boat, peace has always been more than just no war. We really believe that, we don't have a peaceful world if people are hungry or if we're destroying the environment. And I think that is sort of the vision of peace that the SDGs have as well. So the way that the SDGs approach sustainability and peace from different angles, it really matches what Peace Boat does. And we sail with the logo of the SDGs, with the SDGs wheel on the ship. And we became an official partner of the SDGs Action Campaign in 2018. So what do we actually do for the SDGs might be a question. So we do a couple of things. First of all, simply telling people that the SDGs exist. Maybe to all of you here, maybe SDGs is something you've heard about and you are very familiar with, but a lot of people don't know what the SDGs are, or they've seen the beautiful logo, but they don't really know what it means. So having the logo on the side of the ship, it's a really great way to get people's attention. And then in the different countries and ports that we visit, we also organize festivals and events to let people know more about the SDGs. This is an example from Mexico, I think. And we also organize or we coordinate different youth programs so that people can learn about the SDGs in detail. Some focus on sort of environmental issues, while other programs focus more on, for example, SDG 16, which is peace and justice. This is one example of a Peace Boat program. It's called the Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador Program, and it focuses especially on SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 14, life below water. And these amazing youth ambassadors, they come from different regions that are greatly affected by climate change. And on the ship and in ports of call, they share their stories and get to exchange know-how on board. So the idea is that they already know a lot about their context, but they meet other people and that way generate, new ideas and get new inspiration. And in ports of call, they often meet local activists, but also policymakers to really raise awareness of issues related to climate change. All right, so that was a little bit about, Peace Boat's program and what we do on the ship and the type of education we also do in ports of call. But I also want to tell you a little bit about volunteering, because there are different volunteer opportunities on the ship. At the moment, we offer volunteer interpreter and volunteer language teacher opportunities, and we also have internships. I myself joined as a volunteer teacher, as I mentioned, and I will talk a little bit more about that shortly. So as a volunteer interpreter, or as actually communication coordinator, as we call them, you might provide language support for our guest educators, because as you know, not everyone speaks Japanese or English or Chinese. So we make sure that we have a diversity of languages, but we also need, of course, interpreters for that. But also on tours in ports of call, we have our volunteer interpreters help interpret from our partners to Peace Boat participants. And then, as I mentioned, I was a volunteer teacher on board. And as a language teacher, you can teach either English or Spanish on board. And this is part of Peace Boat's onboard language program called GET, Global English and Espanol. And in fact, we also have GET courses in Tokyo. So if people want to study a little bit before a voyage, they can take lessons here in Tokyo as well. All right, and moving on to nuclear disarmament, I will hand it over to Meri.
Yes, thanks so much, Louise. So I think I will be a little bit brief, but just to share a little bit of an example of our work in relation to nuclear disarmament, to show an example of how we connect what is done on the voyage to policy and advocacy outside of the ship as well. And also this is a project which I'm working very closely on personally as well. This is of course related to SDG 16 that Louise was mentioning too. Just to mention very briefly, though, as well as nuclear disarmament, we do also do a lot of work in broader disarmament related, including landmines, for example, as well. But today, for the sake of time, I'll be focusing more on the nuclear disarmament issue. So our flagship project in this area related to nuclear disarmament is what we call the Global Voyage for a Nuclear-Free World, or Peace Boat Hibakusha project. And this hibakusha is the Japanese word for an atomic bomb survivor. Since this project was launched in the year 2019, we have had more than 170 hibakusha, or survivors, as you can see in this photograph, traveling on board Peace Boat around the world to give their personal testimonies about the effects of atomic bombs and to call for nuclear abolition in more than 100 cities around the world in 60 different countries to date. As Louise was mentioning, we think that this firsthand hearing, firsthand learning is very important. And we've really observed that the testimonials of hibakusha have the potential to really move people all around the world and to draw attention to the catastrophic humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons if they are indeed used. This has then played a great role in realizing the Nuclear Weapons Ban Treaty, which was adopted at the United Nations in 2017 and entered into force last year in 2021. So at Peace Boat, we don't limit these activities only to atomic bomb survivors from Japan. We also work with what we call global hibakusha, who are people who are impacted by nuclear testing, uranium mining, and other nuclear development around the world. Like here in the photograph in the top, we have survivors of nuclear testing in Australia, where I'm from. Or also survivors from Tahiti, the Marshall Islands, and also in the bottom photograph, we have actually from Fukushima. So seeing the impact of these nuclear catastrophes as well. We also acknowledge that hibakusha, the people who survived the bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, are not only Japanese, but also the tens of thousands of people from Korea, China, or Taiwan, for example, who were forcibly brought to Japan and still lack recognition and compensation, even now many decades later. So we carry out this project in collaboration with the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN. ICAN is a network of NGOs all around the world, which was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in the year 2017 for its realization in the Nuclear Ban Treaty. I had the honor of being able to attend the Nobel ceremony at that time as part of ICAN as well. And we're involved as one of the steering committee members. And so within this, we work to make sure that the survivors' voices are at the center of all of the negotiations around the treaty. And we continue today to carry out different activities to ensure that their voices are kept at the center, and also to coordinate the network of different Japanese NGOs who are working on this issue, as well as policy advocacy or negotiations, whether it's with the Japanese government or with parliamentarians and different policymakers, both here in Japan, but also in different parts of the world as well. Of course, since COVID, we haven't been able to have our ship sailing anymore, but we believe that even despite this, it's still important to continue to make sure these survivors' voices are heard. Therefore, we've been creating this hibakusha project online in the past 2 years as well. Not only the pandemic, but also the fact that the hibakusha themselves are very old now, of course. Their average age is more than 83 years old now. So it's also much more difficult for them to be traveling. Therefore, these opportunities to connect with people around the world online has also been very precious for them. So in the past 2 years, we've shifted this project online, and we've held these events in 54 different countries around the world during this period. We're always looking for people to work together for these events in different parts of the world as well. So that's one open invitation for everybody here today. We also don't limit these to Japanese survivors, as I mentioned, but we work very closely with people affected by the whole nuclear chain around the world. As one example of something that we've done during the pandemic when it's not possible for our voyages to sail is that in December last year, we organized the World Nuclear Survivors Forum online. So this brought together nuclear survivors from 30 different countries around the world. You can see some of them here in the picture, from Marshall Islands, from Kazakhstan, and more. And on the homepage, which is listed on this slide, you can see short clips of their testimonies, the discussions that were held, and so on as well. So if anyone is interested to learn more, I definitely invite you to take a look at this. And just to share what we're working on right at this moment, as I mentioned, the Nuclear Ban Treaty was adopted at the United Nations, and the very first meeting of the states parties to this treaty is going to take place in Vienna next month in June of this year. So their Peace Boat will be helping to amplify the voices as those of the nuclear survivors and of Japanese civil society, and will be taking place in the government level negotiations that are happening at that time, as well as part of the broader civil society delegation there as well. We'll also be making sure there's many opportunities for online participation in this from anywhere in the world. So if anybody is interested, really invite you to become involved in that as well. So that will end, I think, my brief introduction about the nuclear disarmament as a concrete example. And I'll hand back over to Marin to introduce the next section.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your very informative addresses. And as a reminder to our audience, if you have any questions for our speakers, please post them in the chat. Now I will introduce our final speaker, Suzuki Ikuno, who is an international project coordinator with Peace Boat Disaster Relief. We are happy to have you with us. Please go ahead.
はい、ありがとうございます。すみません。ここからは日本語でお話をさせていただきます。ピースボート災害支援センターの鈴木育野と申します。よろしくお願いします。NGO ピースボートでは1995年の1月、皆さん多分生まれてない方が多いかもしれないですけれども、95年の1月に阪神・淡路大震災という、神戸をメインに、した、メインに大きな被害のあった、震災がありました。その時にピースボートではですね、そこで初めて被災地支援の活動をしました。で、それ以来、日本国内、それから海外で、被災地の支援活動を実施してきました。で、はい、ありがとうございます。で、私たち、ピースボート災害支援センター、略称 PBV というふうに呼んでいるんですが、東日本大震災があった2011年に設立された団体です。で、それまでピースボートとして、いろいろな被災地に関わってはいたんですけれども、比較的短期間の、支援が多かったんですね。で、この東日本大震災が起きたときに、かなり数ヶ月とか数年では済まないぐらいの、支援が必要になるだろうということで、被災地支援を行う専門の組織として、ピースボート災害支援センターが、誕生しました。で、PBV ではこれまでピースボートの分と合わせると、海外で33カ国、国内で62の地域で支援活動を行ってきました。そして、こういった活動を私たちだけでやっているわけではなくて、本当にたくさんのボランティアの方たちの力を借りて、実施しています。今まで10万人以上の方たち、これは日本の方だけではなくて、本当に世界中から、いろんな方が来て手を差し伸べてくださって活動が実現してきました。そしてまた、研修、プログラム、も実施しているので、このボランティアを育成するためのトレーニングプログラムを終了している人が8391人おります。で、ちょっと簡単に今までどういった活動してきたかを少しだけ見ていくと、日本国内だとピースボートで実施した分も合わせると、かなり地震だけではなくて台風の被害、それから土砂災害、豪雨被害、あと大雪、雪害ですね。こういったところにもずっと対応をしてきました。で、次のスライドだと、少し、海外の分も合わせて、紹介すると、最近では、ベトナムの洪水被害とか、フィリピンの、台風、オデットの被害とか、そういった、ところへの対応を現地の NGO と一緒に、はい、対応をしてきました。今なんか通訳の方が聞こえにくいみたいなんですけど、大丈夫ですかね。
Marin, if we can check, it seems that there are some people having a bit of difficulty listening to the interpretation. Should we check in?
Now I can. Yeah. Sorry. This is Katie Rizzi from Youth Cancer Europe, and thank you. Really appreciate your interpretation. I just can't hear it. I'm on the English channel though, so I will try to pay attention. Just maybe come closer to the mic, and then we hear you better. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
はい、すいません。大丈夫そうですかね。もし何かあればいつでも言ってください。で、PBV の活動っていうのは災害サイクルって呼ばれているサイクルに沿って、実施をしています。災害が起きると、それに対して例えば災害の情報を集めるとか、ボランティアを派遣するとか、それから、行政 とかボランティア、それから市民、あと企業とか、そういったところの人たちがみんな協力し合うので、それを調整する、コーディネートする人が必要なので、そういった支援をしたり、あとは食事を提供するとか、避難所を運営するとか、そういった活動をしています。で、その、対応期が、ごめんなさい、一個戻ってもらっていいですか。はい、対応期が終わると、だんだんコミュニティが復旧、元の状態に戻って、またさらに発展していったりっていうことが、サイクルになっていくんですね。で、その災害が終わって、戻って終わりではなくて、次に同じような災害が起きたときに、いかに被害を少なくするかっていうことも重要な、取り組みです。で、その中で、例えば自治体の職員向けのトレーニング、例えば災害が起きたときに一番活躍するのって自治体の、市役所とか区役所とかの人なんですが、彼らにとっても初めての災害、という場合が多いので、まず事前にどういうことが起きますよ、こういう、準備が必要ですよというような、そういったトレーニングをしています。で、その他一般向けとか、ボランティア向けの、研修なども行っています。で、その中の一つとして、ちょっとざっと、新しい取り組みとして PBV がやっている外国人向けの防災講座について少しだけ触れたいと思います。次のスライドお願いします。はい、ですね。日本って、ちょっと今日聞いている方がどのぐらいの割合で日本にいらっしゃる方なのかわからないんですけど、1年間に1000回から2000回地震が起きているんですね。なんで毎日どこかで地震は起きていて、それにプラスして台風が来たり、水害が起きたり、大雪が起きたりとか、すごく自然災害が多い国なんですけど、そういった中で、子供のうちから日本で育っていると避難訓練をしたり、あと防災教育に触れたり、そういった場面っていうのたくさんあるんですが、大人になってから日本に引っ越してきた人とかっていうのは、こういう、教育に触れる機会っていうのがすごく少ないんですね。なので、彼ら向けに、防災マップの見方とか、何を準備すればいいのかとか、災害が起きたらどうやって家族と連絡取ればいいのかとか、そういったところを、学ぶ講座を実施しました。はい。で、これは今年もやっていきます。で、次のスライドお願いします。で、これは今私たちが実施している、国内で実施している活動の一部なんですけれども、例えば今年の3月に福島県沖で大きい地震がありました。で、残念ながらあまり報道されてないんですけれども、東日本大震災の時よりも大きな被害が起きている地域っていうのも実はあって、こういうふうに屋根が崩れてしまったりとか、そういったところで、スタッフを派遣して対応していたり、あと、すごく災害が起きて報道される期間っていうのはすごく短いんですけど、支援が必要になる期間っていうのはすごく長いんですね。例えば2019年に発生した台風15号、19号、ファサイとか、ハギビスって呼ばれている台風ですけど、これももうずいぶん前の、コロナよりも前かな、に発生した台風ですけど、いまだに支援が必要な状態が続いています。こういった形で、地域の人たちと協力しながら PBV では、長い期間、コミュニティがしっかり再建できるときまで、息の長い支援を続けております。で、次のスライドお願いします。で、最後にちょっと少し、今海外の支援事業として実施しているウクライナの支援についてお話をします。PBV ではピースボートと協力をして、ロシア軍による軍事侵攻が始まった直後から支援活動を実施してきました。で、次のスライドお願いします。次のスライドお願いしてもいいですか。はい。で、この、軍事侵攻があった直後、どういったことをしていたかというと、まず街頭募金ですとか、これを日本全国で募金を集めたり、あとご寄付を募ったり、しながら、人道支援の活動、どういったニーズがあるのかとか、そういったところを情報収集していました。で、本当にたくさんの方たちに協力をいただいていて、今すでに1000件以上のご寄付をいただいております。 で、そういった活動をしつつ、3月の下旬には現地調査のためのスタッフ派遣を行いました。で、この時の行き先はルーマニアですね。で、この時の様子の詳しい、内容は、3月の29日に、現地からの報告っていう形で、YouTube で、まだ報告会の様子が見れるので、ぜひそちらをご確認いただければと思うんですが、現地に行って、なかなか日本にいると、現地の様子、特にどういった支援が必要で、すでにどういった支援が行われているのかということが分かりにくかったので、その辺のヒアリングとか、向こうの、行政とか NGO とかと協議をしたり、どういった支援をこれから一緒にやっていけそうかっていうような話し合いをしたり、してきました。で、次のスライドお願いします。で、PBV としては、大きく分けると、ウクライナ国内での支援っていうのと、あとルーマニアを拠点とした支援っていう2本柱で支援を行っていきます。で、ウクライナ国内の支援については、提携団体がパトリールっていうルーマニア平和研究所という NGO を通じて、ウクライナでの支援をしています。で、内容としては、一時避難所、特にウクライナの東側とか南側の今、とても攻撃が激しいところから今、人が西側に避難をしているんですね。もちろん国外に逃げている人もいますけど。なので、そういった、国内避難民のための、避難所の増築とか整備の支援。これが一つ目。それから、あと、病院が被害を受けたりっていうこともあったり、あと流通がもう、止まってしまっているので、医薬品をルーマニアを拠点に調達して、ウクライナ国内まで、届ける活動。それから、食料不足も、日々深刻化しているので、食料のパッケージ、それから、生活用品、衛生用品とかそういったものを届ける、そういったことをしています。で、この写真の、上の写真の黄色いベストを着ている人が、パトリールの代表のカイさんという方で、この写真は医薬品をウクライナの病院、子どもの病院ですね、に届けているところの写真です。で、ルーマニアの拠点とした支援としては、これもルーマニアにある NGO と協力して行っていく支援なんですが、まず一つ目として、ウクライナの中でも、がんの患者さんっていうのがたくさんいるんですね。で、今回のこの戦争によって、治療が継続できなくなってしまっている人、病院を移る必要がある人とか、そういった人たちが多くいます。で、これをユースキャンサーヨーロッパというルーマニアにある、団体の人たちが、もうすでに200名以上の患者さんをヨーロッパ各地への病院に転院、病院を移る手続きをしたりとか、その家族を支援したりとか、そういった活動をしているんですね。で、なかなかこういう戦争とかみたいな、場面、事件自体が起きると、どうしても救命救急医療、外科の治療とか、そういったものが優先されてしまうので、なかなかがん患者への治療っていうものを継続していく、そういったことがプライオリティが下がってしまう。で、その状況に対して対応していく。そういった活動をしている団体を通じて支援していくということで、来週からの3ヶ月間、ユースキャンサーヨーロッパと一緒にこの活動をやっていて、で、またちょっとその後、現地の状況を見ながら延長していければというふうに考えています。それから、あと避難してきた人たちが、働くとか、勉強するとか、そういった、ルーマニアの社会の中で生きていくためには様々な法律の手続きだったり、そういったものが必要になるので、そこを、支援している NGO、ここを通じて彼らの、サポートを行っていきます。それからもう少しちょっと後のステージで始めることを、予定してるんですけれども、避難してきた人たちの心理社会的サポートの提供もしていきたいというふうに考えております。で、次のスライドお願いします。はい。で、ちょっと来週の水曜日に もう少し詳しくこの PBV のウクライナ支援についてお話をする機会がありますので、もしよろしければ、ピースボートチャンネルで配信されますので、ご覧いただければ幸いです。はい。一応 PBV はここまでになります。ありがとうございました。
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and reflections with us today. So now we will take some time for Q&A. And as stated before, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, please write it in the chat either in Japanese or English. And it looks like a lot of people have a lot of great questions to ask the panel. Just looking at some of the questions that were asked, there are certain themes that are apparent. So with this first question, maybe we can ask, how is it possible to get more involved with Peace Boat? And so maybe first you can talk about like what characteristics or what personality traits make a good Peace Boat participant. And then maybe after that discussion, we can talk about, maybe the more concrete initiatives to actively get involved with Peace Boat. So this question can be directed to any of the panelists, but Meri, maybe would you like to first talk about what characteristics make a good participant? And we'll hear from the other panelists as well. And then afterwards, we can talk about how to actively become involved.
Sure. First of all, thank you everybody for the questions. I think because I was sharing the screen before, I didn't have a chance to read them all. So I'm just catching up now and very excited to have the conversation with everyone on these topics. I think one of the great things is because Peace Boat is quite a large organization doing a lot of different themes, a lot of different topics, both the voyages and different campaigns, there really is somewhere for anyone and everyone. I wouldn't say that there is one particular trait or particular characteristic that is required. Of course, on the voyages, the best way to have to get the most out of the experience is in the opportunities you have to meet different people, to talk to different people. So in that sense, being willing to put yourself out there, to talk to different people, to have new experiences will help to make sure that you can maximize the most. But that being said, I personally am actually someone, especially even more than quite shy, not like that at all. And I still had a fantastic time and experience on the voyage as well. But I think maybe I'll pass this question to Louise, because particularly she's working with a lot of different volunteers, a lot of different guests, and I think Louise's perspective can share a bit more on that.
Sure, but I mean, you're completely right, Meri. I think being open to meeting new people and just being open to new experiences, I think that's one of the key words here. I would also say maybe it's important to stress that you don't have to be knowledgeable of global issues and so on. I would say you just have to be curious, maybe interested. You want to learn new things. So don't feel like you have to already be an activist or have done a lot. No, it's more about the curiosity and the interest and so on. So I think that's very important. To be honest, there are also people that go on Peace Boat that start out just thinking that they want to travel and see the world and maybe travel in a slightly unusual way. But then what we see throughout a voyage is that a lot of people end up becoming really interested in these issues. So I always I think someone asked in the chat too, what is sort of a memorable experience or something. Maybe this is one anecdote. There are always people that go on the ship thinking that they're going to read maybe 10, 15, 20 books while they sail with Peace Boat. And I like to ask those people at the end of the voyage, so how many books did you read? And most people say, I didn't even finish one. And I think that's a good example, you know, like you get so caught up in all the other things, you go to lectures and workshops. So even people that start out just wanting to travel, I feel like, they realize that there are so many other things that you can be involved in.
Ikuno, are you interested in sharing some insights as well?
Okay, cool. Yes. Sorry, I will be talking in English if it is probably a bit smoother. Actually, although I didn't include it in my introduction, but I was also on the voyage about 2 decades ago, I'd say. But that experience was became my asset to lead my career path. Then I was involved in other things, in working for international organizations or the private companies or public sectors. Then I came back to Peace Boat Disaster Relief in 2018. But always Peace Boat was a place to go back, and maybe the most precious lesson I learned from Peace Boat would be that whatever caused by people can be solved by people, although it may take a long time, but still it's not impossible. That became my belief, and also Peace Boat has been proving it. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on experience on Peace Boat. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas and some of your personal experiences as well. For the next part of this question, I believe you've prepared some information about how people that are interested in Peace Boat and they want to volunteer, what are some of the specific ways they can get involved with that?
Yes, I'll just get the slide. Louise, maybe you can talk as I'm getting the slide up, because I was moving to a different window now.
Sure, no, of course, no problem. So as I briefly mentioned in my presentation as well, on the ship, we have the communication coordinators, our interpreters. And typically that is people that are that speak a lot of, we of course need Japanese speaking interpreters. So it can be Japanese English, Chinese Japanese, Korean Japanese, but we also have interpreters that interpret between, for example, English and Chinese, or Korean and English, and so on. So it's quite a mix. We, of course, Spanish as well when we visit Latin American ports. So there are lots of different language combinations that we look for depending on where we go. And then you can become an onboard language teacher, language instructor. And of course, you can, as you see at the very top, you can get involved simply by joining as a participant. And then, of course, while you're on the ship, you can be involved in different ways. At the Peace Boat offices, one here in Tokyo and the Peace Boat office in New York, we also have internships. Obviously, during the pandemic, we weren't able to actually have interns in person, but we had interns that joined online and did work for us online. And in order to be an intern, I mean, you don't have to have a specific background. We often have students, but we have different calls for interns where with all the application details there. And yeah, you don't have to be a student, but I would say most of our interns are. I don't know if it's here. Maybe I can actually share a link in the chat where you can maybe read a bit more yourselves. So that's a link to getting involved. It's this one. This one is in English. Sorry to the Japanese speakers. Then, as Meri mentioned, we have our Hibakusha testimony events. And right now we're doing most of the events online, but we are always interested in people that would like to, you know, host or organize a testimony event. It can be at your school, at your workplace, at your community center. It can be, you know, in your village. It doesn't have to be a specific place. And it can be in whichever country you are in. We can support in terms of language and so on. So if you would like to host or organize an event, please get in touch as well. And then maybe the next few parts, that's something that Ikuno-san could talk about a little bit, getting involved there.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and from peaceful disaster relief side, you can, of course, join us as an on-site volunteer when disaster strikes. But unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we hadn't been able to recruit volunteers for the last 2 years. But once all the restrictions are lifted, and we hope not, but it's kind of certain that next natural disaster would occur in Japan, and every year we experience flooding and torrential rains during summer that cause damages in communities. So we will need your help. So if you are interested in joining us as volunteers, please contact me at any time. And also when there is need for volunteers, we usually make open call on our websites and Facebook page and Twitter and all the social medias. So please do. So if you find them, please let me know. And also, if you are away, like if you are not in Japan, but still, if you are interested in helping us online, then we always in need of English proofreaders or translators for our website and other articles. So your help would be greatly appreciated in that way too. And also, we, as I mentioned briefly, you can join our disaster risk reduction training workshops. And also, if you are from organization or companies or a school, you could host one of those trainings, and we can send a speaker to on the training programs which you are interested in. So yeah, there are many ways that you can be a part of PVP's activities. And also, yes, most importantly, and yes, of course, we are running fundraising campaigns. Our activities are always supported by donations from individuals or organizations. So, like if you could, your contribution will be appreciated regardless of the amount. But if you could, if you could cooperate, we can share lots of materials for fundraising, and we can work together. And also, if the more funds we can raise, then the longer or the more activities we can implement. So your support will make a great change in the disaster relief activities. Okay.
And maybe I'll just do very quickly the last points on the slide then, and sort of go between the three of us. I saw someone asking in the chat if there's ways they can become involved in things here in Japan or also online. We have each week many different online, we call them benkyokai in Japanese, which basically means a kind of a seminar or study session on all different topics. So Ikuno mentioned the one she'll be leading next week on the Ukraine humanitarian aid, but also on health-related issues, on culture, on peace-related, of course, sustainability. Each month we have a different theme and have guest speakers coming. Usually twice a week we're organizing these, sometimes on Zoom, sometimes just on YouTube, so you can tune in anytime. Most of these are in Japanese language though, but the English language events we do have a little bit less often, but still common. And we always share information about any upcoming events or volunteer opportunities activities or anything like this on our homepage and also our social media. You can look at peaceboat.org and then also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, WeChat, whatever's out there, and we'll share different information there as well. I'll add some links in the chat maybe as well, but any upcoming opportunities, we always share them too. That was a bit long, but there are some examples of how you can join.
May I add one final thing, because I can see there's a question in the chat about individuals or organizations in Africa. If there are any individuals here or organizations that, you know, anyone that would like to collaborate with us, yes, please send us an email, and we can set up a meeting and discuss how we might be able to collaborate. So that would be great. The email is shared in the chat now. So thank you for the question.
And I just wanted to note to all the participants, I mean, thank you for being so enthusiastic about opportunities to volunteer and work with Peace Boat. And I thank our speakers as well for your very thorough and insightful advice on how to get more involved. So to wrap up today's panel, again, I want to thank all of our distinguished speakers and guests for sharing your time and input with us on the incredible work of Peace Boat. We appreciate hearing from Meri, Louise, and Ikuno. Through our dialogue today, we are reminded that there is more to learn, more voices to include, and more to develop and grow in the future on this topic. So we thank you all for your participation in today's event and invite you to take 2 minutes to complete a survey to share your feedback. You can find that in the chat. And as we bring our events to a close, I would like to extend an invitation to all of you to remain in touch with YPFP Tokyo and consider joining us as a YPFP Tokyo member at our future events. And to find out more, please scan the QR code on the screen. You can also contact our membership director, Charlie, at the email address provided. And so in closing, I would like to emphasize that investing in youth yields a triple benefit. First, improvements in the now. Second, continued benefits through adulthood. And third, positive developments carried forward into the next generation. I would argue that supporting young professionals interested in foreign policy adds a fourth dimension of returns, that of cross-border development and diplomatic growth. I hope that all of you will continue to be part of our work going forward. So thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your week and your weekends. So goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Again, thank you so much.